Like it's 2020, the new millennium, 2020 with the year of COVID, as you all know. And we're singing songs and praying to a God. Like surely science has shown that this stuff doesn't make sense, doesn't exist. This is all just hanging on to myth and mystery. Why believe that there is a God? You can believe that there's a devil because there's nothing on the screen. All right, just a little bit about myself. At the moment, I'm heavily into CrossFit. I don't know if you guys know anything about CrossFit. The first rule of CrossFit is talk about CrossFit, and the second rule of CrossFit is talk about CrossFit. I'm also going through a knife collecting phase, so if anybody's into knives and stuff, I'm like seriously doing that at the moment. It's like popped up in the middle of COVID, and it just took over my life. I've got 2 sons, Joshua and Nathan. Joshua is 4, Nathan's 2, and they keep me running around like crazy. My wife's Miranda. Do you want to plug in and out? It's okay. All right. Thanks, man. I always liked, the. Let's try again. Yes, good stuff. All right. So I did do some preparation. So, as you can see, I'm into CrossFit, and that's a joke, it's like Fight Club, you always talk about it. This is the type of stuff I'm into collecting, these crazy knives. It's just amazing the skill and craftsmanship that people are able to put together. These are my sons, Josh and Nate. They're 2 and 4, as I said. It's chaos in our house with those 2 little boys running around. I'm a doctor, ICU specialist. I studied at the University of Pretoria, where I did my medicine. Came over to KwaZulu-Natal and then specialized in anesthetics. Went over to the UK, came back again, and then subspecialized in ICU care. Spent 2 years in Canada. I've got a subspecialization in crit care, so COVID has been my life during this peak. I was just saying I spent 60 days working consecutively in the ICUs managing COVID patients. We went from like 20 to 60 over the surge. I was head of Gray's ICU, Gray's Department of Anesthetics for about 4 or 5 years, and I've recently gone over into private practice. At heart, I'm a nerd. I'm that guy at school, that just did all the maths and the science and that type of stuff. So one of my big passions is research, academic research, particularly into patients that have heart attacks after surgery or before surgery. And I pride myself a little bit on doing high-quality, serious research. It makes up a lot of who I am and also why I ended up doing some of these type of talks. So I want you just to think about this question. Is it plausible? Does it actually make sense to say that there is a God in 2020? It's easy in a church, to make sense. But once you step out of those doors at school, at university, at your work, in that CNN, ABC world, and you say there is a God, really? There's a lot of people that say that the idea of God is just a feel-good myth. We need somebody there to keep us in control. We need a great-grandfather in the sky to control us and to look after us. It's a projected father image. I've been said that religion is delusional. It's actually anti-rational. It's irrational in what it's doing. It's anti-intellectual. The evidence shows that there is no God. How can you believe it? My story is that I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were involved with the Gideons, the guys that place those little Bibles. I knew a lot about the Bible. I used to take part in these Sunday school SU quizzes. I used to study like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I knew a lot. I considered myself a Christian, and I knew a whole lot. Went off to university, started working, got into my research. My commitment to Jesus Christ wasn't really there. I don't think I really believed it. started having these questions. Is there a God? How can you believe the Bible? Like with all the science tells, what about evolution? Come on, really? But I'd been living as a Christian for so long, it was quite difficult to change what I'd been saying. So we went over to Canada for 2 years. I did a research fellowship there, and my PhD supervisor said to me, look, Reitze, you're a nice guy, but what you're doing is crazy. Like, how can you actually believe that there's a God? Like, seriously. And at that point, I sort of felt, look, I'm living a double life here. I don't really believe this stuff, and I'm saying I'm a Christian, and, I'm supposed to be all about the research. So let's figure out if this stuff is true. And for a period of 6 months, I was in a research fellowship. I just burrowed down into the academic research as much as I could. My PhD supervisor was an atheist, so I looked at atheism, Christianity, and Islam as 3 worldviews, ways of trying to explain the world as it really is. And what I'm looking for is that if you say in this religion that the world is in this way, it's true if it overlaps, all right? It's one of the reasons why Hinduism just didn't work for me. Are we on a back of a turtle on the back of the elephant into infinity? No. We can understand some nature of the world. Does this fit with what we believe about Christianity? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you 5 summary reasons about why I think belief in God is both reasonable and rational. Now, just before we do this, I want to talk about proof. Like 1 + 1 is 2. Right? Happy? Everybody got that? Right? My son is sort of starting to grasp that. That is self-evident. It just is like that. When you look at it, it's mathematics. There are very few things beyond mathematics that we can prove in that manner. All right? The sun is going to come up tomorrow. Do you guys think that to be a true statement? But where's the mathematical proof for that? You don't have a mathematical proof for it. So the evidence of something is got to do about, this makes sense. This fits in with what we think is true. These things overlap and they support each other. And many things you can argue by inference. So who shot Mrs. Johnson? Well, this guy had a problem. He'd stolen money from her, and she'd caught him. He had the gun in his hand. There was gun residue on him. There were footprints on him. It's likely that he stole it. Right. So what I'm going to do is show 5 arguments that point to the fact that there is a God. And they're not only the only 5 arguments, but I think they're 5 of the most weighty arguments that we can make an argument around there is a God. You can also use these if you do a little bit of work, which we are called to do as Christians, is to get into a conversation with somebody and say, well, I'll give you 5 reasons why I think there's a God. You give me 1 reason why there isn't a God, and you've got involved in an interesting conversation. Okay, happy. First one, cosmology. Fancy word for stars and planets and stuff like that. Our universe is busy expanding, right? It's busy becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, the big question is, if you start to run something that is expanding like a balloon, it's been going out, you start running it in reverse, it means it must have come down to like a point when there was just the plastic little balloon with nothing on it. So if you run our universe backwards, 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 and it starts to compress, there's a moment in time where there is no time. It's just this little matter, everything in one little ball. Talk of it this as the Big Bang. And there's a lot of discussion in the physics worlds, Stephen Hawking type intellects, saying, did the universe have a beginning? This is Dr. Vilenkin. He's a Russian scientist. He and Stephen Hawking had a lot of mathematical discussion around this. And he actually wrote a paper for Stephen Hawking for his birthday about 5 or 6 years ago as a present to him, basically saying the universe had a beginning. And I put in the scientific quotes on these things. There are a few mathematical probabilities where it doesn't have a beginning, but in those universes, none of us exist. The best science in the world says that our universe started at a singularity, at a specific point. He says, at this point, it seems that the answer to this question, if the universe is the beginning, is probably yes. Okay, got it? Universe had a beginning. Whatever begins to exist has a cause, right? If a rabbit popped out into existence over here, what would you say? Where did it come from? I probably pulled a trick on you. Hey, there's a cause. There's something behind it. When a cricket ball hits you in the face, There's something that causes, somebody threw that cricket ball, right? Whatever began to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. There was a time when there was no universe, and then there was everything. Therefore, the universe has a cause. All right? Yeah? If everything has a cause, everything that came into existence has a cause, and the universe came into existence, something must have caused the universe. What can cause the universe? What entity, what thing could explain everything that we have around us? So the features of this thing, firstly, it must be immaterial. The universe starts with everything, all energy, all matter, all time, everything in one. There is nothing like that beforehand. So anything that existed before that can't have matter, can't have time. It must be outside time. It must be outside space, because those things don't exist. You agree? It must be incredibly powerful in that it can make everything out of nothing. I would also argue that it is personal. If I hold this thing over here, I can do it like this. If I hold the cup over here and I drop it, right, which I won't do, I can say why did the cup drop? Well, there was gravity pulling on the cup, and then the cup fell through the air at a certain rate, and it came in contact with the floor, and there was an opposite and equal reaction, and it broke the cup, right? But I can also tell you that I decided to drop the cup. Reitze decided to drop the cup, and so the cup fell. In a world where there is no matter, when there is no energy, when there's none of that stuff, how do you make things happen? And the only way to do that is through a choice, through an agent. Now, what entity, what thing is immaterial, not of this realm, is timeless, existed before there was time, is powerful, incredibly powerful, and has got volition, the ability to choose to act? What does that sound like? God. And not the God, small g, that you see on the Marvel comics. You know, Thor's a god. But Thor is like within this time space, he's like limited with power. We're talking about something different. This is what we have in mind when we talk about God. Now, atheism says that there is no God. And this was one of the primary reasons why I jettisoned the whole idea of atheism. Because atheism says that something must be eternal, and it must be the universe. Because where did the universe come from? So atheists need to believe that the universe existed eternally. But the science doesn't show that. The science clearly shows that the universe had a beginning. So, cosmology, a material, existing, time-based universe came out of nothing. That points us in the direction of God. What about physics? Our universe looks designed. Somebody's been putting it together in an amazingly specific way. There are exquisitely fine-tuned physical factors. If you look at our existence here on Earth, the fact that we are here, it is highly improbable. So the universe, at the beginning of the Big Bang, if it expanded too quickly, you would have just had huge gas-filled spaces and no planets. If it had gone too slowly, it would have collapsed back on of itself. And if you'd got it wrong, it would have been, it's something like the 10 to the minus 1,000 chance of getting it right. If the speed of light is different, if the gravitational strength is different by a microfraction, if the electromagnetic strength is off by a fraction, if the forces that hold the nuclei of protons and atoms are slightly different, we don't exist. There is no universe, not just us, there is nothing. Paul Davies, physicist, talking about his field, he says in the cosmology, the impression of design is overwhelming. Roger Penrose, a mathematician, I would say the universe has a purpose. It's not there just somehow by chance. George Greenston, as we survey all the evidence, the thought instantly arises that some supernatural agency, or capital agency, must be involved. Fred Hoyle, a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well with chemistry and biology. These guys are not all Christians. In fact, some are clearly not Christians. They're against the idea of Christianity. But where they are experts in their field, they look at how the world is put together and they go, jeepers, some super intellect has been rigging the game. It's pulling off these incredible things, and it looks like it's been done on purpose. It looks like it's been designed. So physics points to a designed universe. Cosmology points to an entity that brought everything out of nothing, that is all powerful outside time, outside space. What about us? When we look within ourselves, I'm a doctor, the cells and all that type of stuff, that's where my sweet spot is. And when I look inside the human body, when you look through a microscope, when you look at DNA, our cells, we look designed. Now, we as humans can spot design. Have a look at these two pictures. What's that on the left? Mount Rushmore. They're going to be carving Donald Trump in there as well. What's that on the right-hand side? What's that picture? It's a granite dome. But what is that? What do you see there? The bat signal, 2 eyes. Can you see that bird? It could be a bird, it could be a bat. All right, now, you guys know that's Mount Rushmore. What's the chance that wind and rain created those faces there? 0. Why? Because it's specific. Those are 4 presidents' faces that are up over there. And it contains information. These are the presidents, and they're carved in order. So there's a pattern in your mind that you know, you look at that, you match it. That thing over there is not carved by human hands. It's a shadow rock. Some people call it eagle's rock. That thing, some people see eyes, you see a face. You can understand it. You walk 2 steps to the left and the image disappears. That's chance. We as humans can identify design. So what happens when we as humans look at our own DNA? This is from a fascinating computer science journal. The guys talk about DNA, and they say there is general agreement that the informational aspect of life is perhaps its key property. These guys write about what is life, what makes something living. And they bring this down to saying that the information, structured information within the DNA, that is what creates life. That is what life is. Which is very interesting from a Christian perspective, because Genesis opens up with God speaking and injecting order and information into the world. Richard Dawkins is what I would call the arch atheist. He's like, front in the row for atheism. He's not for this, Christianity at all. He writes, the machine codes of the genes is uncannily computer-like. Apart from differences in jargon, the pages of a molecular biology journal might be interchanged with those of a computer engineering journal. When you look at it, you can see information coded into the DNA. In fact, guys are looking at using DNA as a storage system for information, biological storage. You can store more codes, more complex, and in that little thing that the guy's holding there, he reckons you can store 500,000 DVDs worth of information in that. So if you look at this, you can all read it and understand it. Yeah. And it's specific to me because I say thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for coming. You know that some intelligence has created those words there. They have context, they have meaning, you understand it. That's not chance. It's particularly not chance that it's come up tonight. What we would have people believe is that these complex sentences and lines have come out by random chance. And this is the theory that if you have enough monkeys hammering away at a computer, you'll get something like Hamlet's play or a sonnet or something coming out. What actually happens is they've done this type of experiment with about 20 monkeys in a cage. They didn't get a single word out of it because you need a space, word, space to make sense, to make meaning. And the monkeys don't push the space bar. They use it as a toilet. They hit it around. They don't get information. So when we look inside the cells, we see little engines, little machines running around in our cells that if you take away one part of that machine, it doesn't work. This is called irreducible complexity. How do you go from a bicycle to a motorbike? Can you make single small changes to the bicycle, add a piston, add a crankshaft, add a brake to it, add a disc brake to it, and your little girl can still ride on that bicycle, and then slowly over time you can turn it into a motorbike? Would you let your daughter ride around on a motorbike, on a bicycle with half an engine that doesn't work, half the wheel? The engine either works fully or it doesn't work. Pull out a spark plug or a distributor cap, or don't put petrol into the engine doesn't work. It is irreducibly complex. If you take away a part of it, it doesn't work, right? So our bodies are made up of millions of cells, and in those cells are little machines that are running around doing their thing. I'm going to show you a little video clip of a bacteria, and we're going to zoom in onto the bacteria, and it's got a little tail. This tail is called a flagellum, right? And the flagellum spins around at like millions of rotations a minute. Like, this thing is incredible. But look at its design. Look at that. It's got a rotor, it's got a stator on it, it's got a universal joint on it, it's got a whole energy design system in which it allows it to spin. It looks like an outboard motor. And if you take away a single one of those proteins, the thing doesn't work. Nothing. When the cell builds this thing, it uses just-in-time engineering principles. So it builds the first stabilization base first, then it builds the rest of the motor, then it puts in the driving proteins, then it builds the tail. It's efficient, it's elegant, and it works as one unit. Our bodies are full of these molecular machines. So what you're going to see over here is DNA starting to copy. And you're going to see a strand of DNA come, here it comes, and it plugs into a thing called a ribosome. Ribosome is like a protein thing. It takes two parts, links together. There's a little instruction on the DNA that says start coding here. And it starts coding, and it pulls in proteins, and it creates this little chain. So there's the locking mechanism coming in. And now you're going to see these bits of protein coming into it, and it starts to make a new protein. So it's taking little blocks of amino acids, starts building it. And when you see this thing run, you start thinking about one of those production lines in a factory. Look at that. And that's how they actually move. These are conformational changes initiated in the protein as a result of changes in the charges as those other proteins move through it. And at the bottom over there, that little glowing thing, you can see a new protein being formed. This has been designed. You see it, you look at it, you know something put it together. So when I look at cosmology, the universe had a beginning. So something that was non-physical, non-outside time made it. When people look at the physics of the universe, it's clear that it's been designed. When we look within ourselves, it's clear that it's been designed. What about morality? I'm going to make a statement over here. It is always, at all times, in all places, wrong to torture an innocent child for pleasure. Do you agree? Yeah? You can say yes. If you say no, you can come and talk to me afterwards. I believe that statement to be true, and I think you believe it to be true. You know that to be true, irrespective of the culture, irrespective of where we are. Even if every single person were doing this, it is still wrong. We know it to be true. You know it. There's no doubt about that. So how best do we explain this? Why do we all share this common morality? Why is this thing, this imperative to believe this to be true in all of us? What's the basis for morality? If you believe that there is no God, then we have all evolved from bacteria. So then you need to explain our morality, this objective truth of morality, on evolution. But if you base it on evolution, the logical implication is that morality is arbitrary. That which you think is so precious and so important has got zero meaning. If we had evolved slightly differently and gone down the black widow spider side, then women would kill their men after having sex with them, and it would be considered normal. So why are you making such a big hoo-ha about this whole abuse of the child? It's a preference. Now, it's not just me saying it. Some of the most intellectual, best-thinking atheists write this. Michael Roos is really, like if you want to read an atheist, he's really good to read. He's thoughtful. He's wrong, but he's thoughtful, and he actually engages in good discussion. Dawkins is not good on that side. Roos actually engages well. He writes, morality is a biological adaptation. Considered as a rationally justifiable set of claims about an objective something, such as don't abuse children, ethics is an illusion. Morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction, and any deeper meaning is an illusion. So he's not saying don't be moral. He's saying that our society has got these moral laws, but let's just be serious that these things are just cultural choices that we make. It's just being, not raping somebody, not abusing somebody, it's just good manners. We know that to be not to be true. Roos and evolutionists believe that morality is like ice cream. So if I tell you chocolate, it is wrong to like chocolate ice cream, you look at me and that's ridiculous. You know, he's basically saying that morality underlying it is just arbitrary. It's a choice. Do you like chocolate? Do you like pineapple? So what? In Christianity, theism bases this moral force on God. He says that there is a moral law, and where there is a moral law, something places that law into effect. That pressure that we feel to do the right thing is as a result of a moral lawgiver. Why do we value people? What makes them special? We say that God anchors that value. God is the highest conceivable being. He is the highest good. He is the origin and the source of all that is good. We can anchor it in God. It's not just arbitrary. And why moral duties? It's because God impresses those on us, on all humans across the world. We know that you will love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and you will love your neighbor as yourself. And you see repetitions of those statements in all the major faiths and religions. So I'm not saying that atheists can't be moral. We all share that. I'm asking why, what best explains what we know to be true. Theistically, morality is like insulin. If you've got a problem, you need the medicine. You can't choose what you want. It is like that. So it's ice cream, which is personal choice, versus this is the way it is, objective morality. So when I look at the universe, we see a created universe out of nothing. We see a designed universe. We see designed life. We experience the pressure of moral law, objectivity of moral. And all of this will take you to the existence of a God. But why am I a Christian? Why am I not a Muslim? Because we all believe that there is a God that created. Why am I a Christian? And for me, the core thing over here is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I'm going to make a quick argument for it on the basis of historical documentation, not talking about the Bible as though the Bible is the Word of God. The first thing is that Jesus Christ was crucified and he died. So he existed, he was crucified, and he died subsequently to that. Josephus was an ancient Jewish scholar, a historian. He ended up working for the Romans, and he wrote a whole tome, which you can read on the internet, called Jewish Antiquities. And he writes about Jesus, who was supposed to be somebody important for the Jews, the Messiah. He was killed, he was crucified, and he died. Tacitus is a Roman. He's writing to some of his seniors. He writes in a tome called the Annals. You can look at it online, go and read it. He's not happy about the Christians because the Christians are busy causing dissension in Rome. They're busy undermining the deity of Caesar, and he doesn't like it. And he talks about these people following Christos, who said that he was a God who died on the cross. On the cross, he was killed. And Lucian of Samosata, he's a Greek playwright, and he mocks the Christians in this play. He says, look, if you come into a city and you don't have money or food, you go to the Christians and you tell them that you're a Christian, and those suckers will give you a home, a place to stay, and they'll give you food. And the most ridiculous thing is they worship this crucified sage who they call Christ, who they think is God, and he mocks them. So you've got people who don't like Christians, Jews, a Roman, and a Greek, all making a statement that Jesus Christ lived and that he died. Something happened to Jesus' body. The people who saw him risen claimed that the tomb was empty. When I have issues at work with people saying, my mom isn't dead, what we do is we bring them to the bedside and the body is there. Nothing speaks more clearly and complete than that. If you wanted to crush this little lie that Jesus is alive, you pull out the body and you demonstrate it to be there, and you just shut everybody up. And even the guys that killed Jesus, the Jews, said that the body wasn't there. What did they say? They said, the disciples have stolen his body in the night. We don't know where it is. It's the dog ate my homework. Where's your homework? No, the dog ate it. What don't you have? You don't have your homework. Nobody had the body. This is, it's like, we call this enemy attestation. The statements that your enemy is making are busy proving your case. Okay, so Jesus Christ lived and he died. Somebody said that this tomb was empty. And then people started saying that he had risen from the dead. First, his 11 disciples. And about 200 other people start saying that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. When you tell a lie, it's money, power, or sex that's driving those three. All right? So it has to be gain in telling a lie. You're trying to get out of trouble or something like that. These 11 guys start saying in the noonday of the Roman Empire, Rome rules all, saying that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Do they get money for it? No. They get kicked out of the synagogue. They get persecuted. They get stabbed. They get hung upside down. They get crucified. They lose all status, all position. Nobody gets any girls in this. This is an absolute disaster of a lie. They get spread out across the whole Middle Asia. Nobody's communicating by WhatsApp. Guys, we've got to keep this conspiracy alive, Not a single one of them survives. They all get killed off, except for John. He gets isolated. Not one person says, sorry guys, it was a lie. When somebody's busy burning you to death, what do you say? You'll say anything to get out of these. These guys refuse to change their story. Why would they do that? What could be driving that? But you'd say to me, okay, Reitze, I got it. But these guys were brainwashed by Jesus. They were his most trusted allies. Paul, who wrote a significant part of the New Testament, before it was Paul, was called Saul. This guy was a brilliant academic mind. He was going to become one of the top lawyers in the world, in that world, studying under some of the top scribes. He hates the Christians because they are doing bad things to the Jewish religion. They're saying that there's a second God, which you can't do. And he's just going after these Christians with 100%. He's going to make his name in his career by destroying these Christians. All of a sudden, he does a 180. He starts saying that he saw Jesus Christ. He loses his position in the Jewish upper class. They try to kill him. He gets stoned more than once. He gets shipwrecked. He gets beaten and whipped and thrown in jail and whipped and beaten again. And in the end, they chop off his head on some Roman road somewhere, and he's dead. And he throws everything away, money, power, fame, the whole lot, to go after this person that he said he saw on the road. Why would he make that lie up? What secondary gain could he have? Could it be that it's true? And then there's this other guy, James. This is James the Just, as he was known in Rome. He led the Christian church in the first century. The day that I stand up and say that I am the Son of God, you guys go to my brother. And you start talking to my brother about my behavior, and we'll quickly dispel that issue. James and his family look at Jesus running around, and they think that Jesus is crazy. They go to Jesus and they say to him, we think there's something wrong with you. Are you possessed? You need to come away from us. Jesus is going on about all of this stuff. He's making all these claims of deity. He becomes so dangerous to the family that the family withdraw from him. At his time of death, there's only his mother standing there. You run a mile away from that family member that's going to cause your death, that's going to destroy your family. Like they don't know him. 5 years later, this guy runs the Christian church. He is 100% convinced that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And why? Because he saw Jesus. He saw his brother resurrected from the dead. In fact, at the time of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, Jesus' family is in the upper room praying with the disciples. Not only does this one guy come away with this total change, all of them do. So Jesus died on the cross. The tomb was empty. The people that followed him said that they'd seen him rise. The people that hated him gave up their lives and their careers because they say he rose from the dead. What's the best explanation for these historical facts? I believe it is that Jesus Christ is who he said he was. So, is belief in God a feel-good myth, delusional, irrational, anti-intellectual? I believe as a scientist, as somebody I believe tries to see the truth, when you take Christianity and our world and you put them over one another, Christianity reflects the world as it really is. Both in physics, cosmology, physics, biology, our internal moral world, and historically. You can believe and have a good, rational, reasonable basis for the existence of God in 2020. Thank you. All right.
So now the floor is with you. If you've got questions or comments, and if we could just stop the recording.